Over the last 5 years of this channel, we have covered many different forms of horror. One consistent quest of mine has been to find a horror anime that truly manages to frighten me, and it has proven to be quite the task. I've watched hundreds of horror anime. While Perfect Blue, Aku no Hana, Mononoke, Shiki, and Boogie Pop Phantom have certainly unnerved and disturbed me, none of them have managed to really frighten me. Dark Gathering from 2023 got very close, but fell short, and I figured that there would be no anime out there that could actually terrify me, like Incantation, The Conjuring, Skinamarink, or Sinister. After the Pride video, my friend and collaborator Chloe Sunflora recommended a show to me from the 2025 summer season. Happy to check out pretty much any one of her recommendations. To my utter surprise, she led me to it. After all of these years. An anime that scared me. In the year 2025, we have been delivered a show that not only is the best of its season, in my opinion, but it might just be the best horror anime of all time. The summer Hikaru died. Yasuke Tsuchinaka's best friend, Hikaru Indo, went missing in the mountains over the summer for a week. When he was found, he had no recollection of what happened, and his personality had undergone some minor shifts that Yoshiki noticed. After 6 months, Yoshiki finally decides to confront Hikaru about who he really is, and he cracks immediately, revealing that Hikaru died, and that he entered Hikaru's body to replace him. Whatever is in Hikaru now begs Yoshiki to keep this a secret because he doesn't want to kill him, and, fearing for his life, he agrees. Not only does the anime spare no time giving us the twist, given that it's in the first few minutes, right out the gate this is a very fascinating premise. Media featuring something that isn't human, trying its best to pass as one, tends to lead to some amazing stories, such as John Carpenter's The Thing and Philip Kaufman's Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and The Summer Hikaru Died is certainly no exception. However, while titles such as those focus on creatures that's main goal is to replace humanity, Hikaru brings a very human approach to this idea. It wants so badly to just live an ordinary life and pass as a normal being. It wants to sob to cliche movies, eat watermelon, and pet cats. It is an incredibly innocent and almost full of childlike wonder being. This same childlike wonder adds the initial feeling of unease to Hikaru, and makes the ending scene of episode 1, where Hikaru breaks into someone's house and kills them, all the more terrifying. It quickly establishes that Hikaru would do anything to not be discovered, and it shows us that Yoshiki is in fact in real danger by being around Hikaru. Yoshiki is aware of this too, and he knows Hikaru is bad news now, but he can't help not wanting to leave his side. This is where the main core and heart of the show comes from, and is unfortunately where I'm sure many people dismiss the show, as it's clear Yoshiki is in love with, or was in love with, Hikaru. Yoshiki and Hikaru grew up together. They've been best friends for years, and Yoshiki has heavily repressed feelings that he doesn't know how to explore. He knows Hikaru, or that the one he knew rather, is gone, and he will never come back. Instead, he has a person at his side that looks like Hikaru, talks like Hikaru, and acts similar enough to Hikaru, but he is not, and never will be, the Hikaru he once knew. Even still, Yoshiki cannot let go. He's not ready to let go. Against his better judgment, he continues to live an illusion that everything is okay and nothing is wrong. What makes Yoshiki's grieving worse is that it's something he has to go through alone. No one else realizes Hikaru is dead, and he can't exactly tell anyone about it either. This clinging to what once was, this inability to become comfortable with what was left behind, leads to some awful things happening in their village. Hikaru isn't human, and he can't understand the value of human life, but Yoshiki does understand the value of human life, and he's aware of the threat Hikaru poses to the village, yet he enables him, which begs into question who the real monster in this story is. His lack of consideration for the village could come from the way they seem to treat his family. His mother and sister are often ridiculed because she lets his sister stay home from school, and they aren't shy with their judgment as they tell it right to Yoshiki's face. Even he isn't exempt from their judgment, as they often criticize his appearance and demeanor. The village folk are very blunt when expressing how they feel about people clearly, which on top of how the village has treated one of their homosexual residents in the past makes Yoshiki feel he can never truly be himself. The only time he manages to find peace with his identity is when Hikaru is around, so knowing that he's dead throws all of that into turmoil. Their dynamic sets the tone perfectly. Grief and an aura of somberness litters every frame the two are together, even ones that are meant to be happier. Hikaru is in survival mode, and while innocent appearing, struggles to control himself. At any point in the story, a switch could be flipped, turning him into a potential killing machine. Meanwhile, Yashiki can't come to terms with the fact that Hikaru just isn't alive anymore, and he is willing to look past every red flag to keep the image of someone who he loved alive, all the while having intense queer subtext, as we learn that while it attempts to copy Hikaru's personality, it's very likely that Hikaru also loved Yashiki. It's just so unfortunate that he's only able to be more open about it now that he's dead. And this makes things harder for Yashiki given he does love Hikaru still, so it makes him even blinder to things than he normally would be. While on the surface, the summer Hikaru died is the story of an entity replacing someone's friend and figuring out what to do about that. The entire story as a whole actually could be read as an allegory for repressed sexuality or internalized homophobia, coinciding along exploration of identity now that Hikaru has been essentially replaced. Yashiki has to go through a journey to understand himself, his family, and his feelings about Hikaru. Is he wrong for accepting Hikaru for what he is now? Is he acting selfishly knowing what he does, yet not caring? How does he truly feel about Hikaru and what Hikaru is now? Hikaru's journey is an exploration of trying to understand what exactly he feels about Yashiki alongside two philosophical ideas: Swamp Man, which is discussed in the show, and the Ship of Theseus. Swamp Man is a thought experiment posed by Donald Davidson in 1987 that describes a scenario where a man is walking through a swamp when a nearby tree is struck by lightning, and in that instant the lightning strike disintegrates him, but creates an exact copy of the man in its place through the body of the tree, physically and mentally. This means that the body is the same, the behaviors are the same, and its memories are the same, so this begs into question, even though that man has technically ceased to exist, is that tree not still that man since it is an exact replica of him? Or is it an entirely new being dubbed Swamp Man? The other is the Ship of Theseus, which comes from ancient Greece. This provides a thought experiment that if a wooden boat were to have every plank in it replaced, would it still be the same boat? Or would it now be a different boat since none of its original pieces were present anymore? Over time, this question has come to be comparable to humans, as the human body will eventually replace nearly every single cell in its body multiple times through someone's lifespan, and our memories come and go alongside it. Does this mean that we are the same person, since by the time we die, very little of us is the same as when we were born? While characters seem to debate and answer the question throughout the runtime of the show, mainly the Swamp Man dilemma, the mangaka Mokumo Kuren seems to believe Donald Davidson's interpretation for Swamp Man. Swamp Man, or in the series case, Hikaru, is not the same person. Why? Because even though the memories are the same, this new being does not have common sense, behavioral understanding, or a connection to the world around him. Over the course of the show, we get to see glimpses of what the real Hikaru is like, and the new Hikaru is nothing really like him. It poses an interesting question that is up to the audience to decide. If Hikaru were still alive, would he begin to change and align with how the new Hikaru is, given he is still actively growing up and going through puberty? Or is this new Hikaru trying to understand the world around him, forming experiences that are creating its own personality that is different from what Hikaru's was? Surrounding the two's dynamic is a gigantic conspiracy that seems to grow and unravel throughout the show. The main one being what actually happened to Hikaru on the mountain. How did he die? He went up there to perform a ritual that seems to have failed somehow. So what was that ritual, and how did it fail? The village seems to have some unusual practices to it that stand out compared to other local villages. Practices that make them seem to worship a god that isn't well known in today's world. This suggests that what lives inside of Hikaru might not just be your run-of-the-mill ghost. Things in the village begin to go awry once what lives inside of Hikaru shows up and their alleged ritual fails, flooding ghosts into not only the city, but the residents of the city, as it feels like the entire village is gradually losing its sanity. All of this heart and grief complements the horror excellently, as nothing makes horror media more intense than when you care about the characters. You could get emotional, you could maybe even find yourself relating to parts of the show. The time it gets itself to unwind and let its characters feel are truly amazing. Yashiki is warned that the closer he gets to Hikaru, the more he'll begin to mix with it, meaning that the thing in Hikaru will become more entangled in his life, potentially attaining his humanity and his soul forever, and that he will start noticing the supernatural, and it will start noticing him too. Speaking of, let's finally talk about the horror, shall we? I'm sure that's what some of you are here for. The thing that cued me in immediately that this could be a good showcase of horror is the opening for Netflix, with a bass drum playing lowly in our ear as water drips as if it's like raining outside, cutting between random real-life imagery, almost feeling reminiscent of the tape that would summon Sadako in the ring. It sets the vibe right for a show that will eventually seep into your skin and make your hair rise. The summer Hikaru dies stands out in anime when it comes to horror. Very commonly, you will see shows try to stray away from supernatural elements, as oftentimes they can come off as goofy in animation. Instead, many will go down the route of gore when it comes to the genre. Gore is very common in anime for horror. Being aware that the supernatural could be goofy, this show turns its supernatural elements into something pretty unique, leaning very heavily into cosmic horror. For those that don't know, cosmic horror is a subgenre of horror that showcases things beyond human comprehension and focuses on how insignificant human life is in the greater picture of the universe. Often referred to as Lovecraftian horror due to the genre being popularized or possibly even invented by H.P. Lovecraft, some of my favorite examples of cosmic horror are, once again, John Carpenter's The Thing, Alex Garland's Annihilation, and David Pryor's The Empty Man, which also is a fantastic movie that not enough people have seen. If you like Hikaru or any of those movies I just talked about, maybe you should check that out. Anyways, getting back to the point of the video. Hikaru is a great example of this, as he is a walking corpse presumably, with his insides appearing to be a blue and red amoeba-like mush. He can split open his body easily to take pieces of himself out, and sometimes he cannot control what is stored inside of him from coming out. There is still a lot we don't know about him and what is really inside him, as more terrifying parts of this are unveiled as the series goes on. Even ghosts that appeared throughout the runtime of the show are approached in ways that are beyond comprehension most of the time, especially with how their heads and necks are often portrayed. It makes you wonder if at any points these quote-unquote ghosts were even human. Adding to this sense of unease the ghost presents is them being drawn in a realistic, gritty way akin to Mirako-chan's ghosts, and they move in ways that are so unnatural and unnerving, like the ghost from Kiyoshi Kurosawa's Pulse. Something that can add a lot of unease and fear is the camera angles, as the production of Hikaru likes to experiment with them a lot. There are top-down POV shots from Yashiki's eyes, so you can see and feel what he does, fisheye lens to create an unnatural feel to a shot, Dutch angles which are commonly used in horror movies, close-up and extreme close-ups to create discomfort for audiences, and even unconventional angles like through bicycles that can make us feel as if they are being watched. There's even a scene in episode 2 that feels like an homage to James Wan horror, like The Conjuring. At so many points, the creative team seems to be having a lot of fun with how they are composing how we will view the story. Not only does the show experiment with camera angles, but it gets really creative with the show's overall presentation. There are like unconventional shot fills of the entire screen, manga panels in real-time spaces, cuts to real-life items like raw chicken and real-life scenery, fast-paced cuts to build tension, and in some cases random cuts to make an unprepared viewer not know what to expect next. There's a scene in episode 5 where Yashiki's body is superimposed with what looks like either ground beef or human brains. Sometimes scenes are outright surreal. And of course, the show has an incredibly unique sound design provided thanks to the sound director Koji Katsumatsu. Funnily enough, he has worked on a surprising amount of Ghibli films, but the most notable previous endeavor of his is Boogie Pop Phantom, which explains a lot, as when I watched that show last year, one of its main takeaways was brilliant sound design. Sometimes dialogue is overlaid on top of each other to create a lot of busy speaking, making it hard to understand what is being said and subtly putting stress on the viewer. Other times we're presented with an ominous silence, making us afraid of a jump scare that will never come. It is consistently soothing when it needs to be, and unsettling when it wants to be. I'd like to highlight an example from the show that happens once again in episode 5, for why the horror is just so effective, at least in my very subjective opinion. Yashiki's sister notices hair in her bathroom that clearly doesn't belong to any member of the family. She hears an unusual drop of water next to her. Looking over, she immediately notices hair poking out of the bathtub. How plainly it showed us such an unnatural visual with plain ambient room tone made my skin crawl. As she goes to run out of the room, this moment begins to build up with the entity darting across the room. This provides us with yet another amazing camera angle that is probably only possible through animation, through the hair follicles of this creature. And then, the scene crescendos as a being beyond human comprehension lies on the other side of the door. It manages to create and execute a realistic moment you'd see in horror movies, and then it goes and turns into a showcase of cosmic horror as she realizes what lies on the other side of that door is anything but human. This moment is one of many that appear throughout the runtime of Hikaru that are leagues above what other anime can provide in the horror department. This comes as a huge surprise since Cygame's previous endeavors are Uma Musume, also known as Pretty Derby, and Idolmaster. Even the director, Ryohei Takeshita, hadn't worked on horror before, with his previous endeavors being Jellyfish Can't Swim in the Night and Arrow Manga Sensei. Oh lord! It's insane that the studio and Takeshita were able to make such an amazing horror anime with no previous experience in the genre. Unless you consider Arrow Manga Sensei a horror anime, in which case, totally understandable. I get it. Going back to the anime, another element that really adds to the tension is what will happen if Hikaru's secret gets out. Tracking down Hikaru is Tanaka, a man, a part of a mysterious organization that hunts down and exorcises paranormal entities. And he has a pet hamster. Although we aren't exactly sure what his intentions are, and if he is a good guy or a bad guy. Ri Kuribayashi is a housewife that not only sees ghosts, but can exorcise them as well, and does her best to support Yashiki in his troubled situation. Although she is very conflicted about how to deal with Hikaru. And their classmate Asako Yamagishi can hear the undead, meaning that she can probably hear that something is off with Hikaru. All of these factors definitely stress us out, but make us very worried. Will Hikaru kill everyone if they find out? Will Hikaru turn on Yashiki, assuming he is the reason his secret is out? I will say that I'm going to not talk about spoilers, or anything that could be remotely related to it in this video. I want this to be your call to action. If you haven't seen This Summer Hikaru Died yet, please do yourself a favor, turn off this video and go watch it. It's on Netflix, or if you're willing to sail the high seas, you can watch it on some other things too. The second season has been announced, so we will be getting a full adaptation to this amazing story. It is so worth your time, and it is a complete and utter shame that something as good as this has gone completely under so many people's radars, outside of the scene where Yashiki's got his arm inside of Hikaru, which you'll have to watch the show if you want to know what the fuck's going on there. Again, it is unfortunately very likely that this show has been dismissed by so many people due to the fact that it showcases queer characters and themes. And to that I say, bigots, please get over yourself. Like seriously, you are the reason that people like Yashiki are afraid to be open about themselves. Tighten up, move past your preconceived notions. So what if a dude wants to kiss another dude? Strap yourself in and watch a once-in-a-lifetime horror experience. You're not going to see this anywhere else. For everyone else, again, please, can't say it enough, just go watch the show. I doubt this will be the last time I talk about Hikaru, so as the second season comes out, come back around here. I may just happen to have another juicy and informative video for you to turn on for background noise. All it will cost you is a simple subscription to the channel, and maybe a like on this video if you're feeling daring enough. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Happy Halloween!